Glenn family. I'm Ryan, and this is my wife, Katie. This is not Nikki, okay? Though she may look very similar. So I see some familiar faces. We've been here several times throughout the years, more so maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago when we were still in the States. But we are now in the Dominican Republic. God has called us to full-time ministry there. I started talking to Pastor Eric probably maybe almost a year ago. He found out through Nikki that her family were missionaries overseas and reached out just to make contact, and we arranged. I think maybe you guys saw a video of us at one point, but we arranged to be here today. I am disappointed not to get to meet him because we've only communicated over Facebook Messenger, but I'm thankful for him inviting us. So we're going to share this morning our ministry that God has called us to, and then with the time remaining, I will bring a sermon. So Freedom International Ministries is the name of our ministry. We are the Glenn family, and you can see, so that's Freedom International Ministries. The international people get confused. They ask, where are you all at? Well, we're just one place in the Dominican Republic. It's international because it's overseas from America. So we have been there just 3 years now. August 6th, I believe, is our 3-year. August 1st is our 3-year anniversary. So like I said, this is my wife, Katie. I'm Ryan, and then we have twins, Sam and Charlie, who are 10, Zeke, who is 7, soon to be 8, and Ben, the little guy, who has just turned 6. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the Dominican Republic, where are we? So you can see that gray country there that's kind of highlighted out to the middle. There's a dotted line that kind of leads you from where it is, but if you go basically straight south of Florida past Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cuba, you find us. The little heart that's on the grayed out image is the specific place that we're at there in the Dominican Republic, a little city called Ramon Santana. So in the Dominican Republic, their main sources of income really are agriculture and tourism, along with a few others. The main religion is Catholicism, so this is the original place that Columbus landed, and that religion kind of followed from Spain over. Everybody there will tell you that they believe in God, but not everybody has a relationship with Jesus Christ. That's probably our biggest challenge, is because it's such a religious country. Everybody on their buses and their cars, even more so than in the States, have God is faithful, Jesus is everything. Every public transit vehicle you see will have some slogan like that on the bus. Another thing that is also prevalent in the Dominican, because of the African influence in Haiti, is Haitian voodoo, often referred to as the 21 divisions. So they, in this country, intermix Catholicism and voodoo quite a bit. It creates a lot of challenges for us to bring the gospel, because everybody is religious and they think they have what they need. And then major problems that we do face in the country are human trafficking and prostitution. Next slide. Okay, so the people that we work with are predominantly Haitian. So we're in the Dominican. We do have Dominican people that we minister with, but the majority of the people that we minister with are in Haiti, or are from Haiti. It allows us kind of access to that country, which is much more difficult to be in, especially at this time, without being in that country. Specifically where we work, if anybody in here is farmers, you guys have really big fields of corn and corn and soybeans and other things. Your fields are really tiny in comparison to the farm that we work with. It's about 240,000 acres of sugarcane. So we only work with about a 16-mile radius of people around us, so we're just touching the tip of the iceberg, if you will. So most of our kids come from these villages. They're called bates, which is specifically a village for sugarcane workers. To live there, the man of the house has to be employed by the company. So he could be cutting cane, he could be hauling it on ox and cart, he could be doing the weighing before they load it on the train, and then they have all the other kind of things that come with farming maintenance that these men can work in. But they do have to be employed by the company to live there. It's company-provided housing. It's a company store. So if anybody is a historian and you know much about early America, railroad and coal, it functioned very similar to that. These People that we work with are mostly illegal immigrants. They come over kind of under the radar. The country understands they need them for tourism and agricultural needs. So the kids that we work with are relatively left alone, but we do deal with immigration with some of our kids that come from the nearby towns and cities. Let's see. So the company provides a house. Just to give you an idea of kind of what life is like, you can see the little boy in the picture there. Clothes are all hand-dried. Some people have rudimentary washing machines. It's public outhouses and showers. Unless you are one of the higher-ups in the country, you may have your own little outhouse connected to your house or just behind it. So it's all public facilities. And then many people that are living in the villages are illiterate. So you'll see one of the tools that we use is a school. Our kids face a lot of challenges because their parents are illiterate, so they don't have help with their schooling at home. So that's just one of the challenges that we face.
So as Ryan said, one of our main tools that we use is our Christian school. Our goal at Freedom is to equip people through long-term discipleship to engage their culture according to their design. Our slogan is love God, love people, and live design. The idea isn't that to educate these children out of poverty. It is that they learn to love God first, love those around them, and live the life that He has designed for them. Maybe that would be a doctor or a lawyer, or maybe that is to go back to their villages and cut sugarcane alongside their fellow village members and share God's gospel there. As again, we said our main tool for that is our school. For the upcoming school year, we'll have 365 students, which goes from pre-K 3 up through 11th grade. Each year, we're adding a grade, so we're up to 11th grade, and then the following year, we'll have our first graduating class, which is really exciting. Freedom started out in one of the villages in an old church building, and these kids have been with Freedom, most of them, from the very beginning. It's been really neat watching them grow. We've just been there at the tail end of it, but just seeing some real leaders coming out of our older students has been really exciting to watch and see. Along with the villages that we go to, there is a town next to us called Montantana that people from there will also come in, or we have students from there as well. At the top, you can see that's our school picture from last year. And down here at the bottom, that is our campus. Our school is still under construction. It's going to eventually close and kind of be like an octagon shape. In the middle is a big open air, kind of like a giant open air pavilion. That's where we have breakfast and lunch for the students, which is a big deal. Many of them struggle with just even having enough food to eat every day. A good friend of my boys asked me once, he said, "Miss Katie, do you eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack every day?" I was like, "Yeah, buddy, we do." And he was just amazed by that. So that is a real big benefit of the schools. We do get to provide them 2 meals. Along with the school here, you can see we have a little playground down in the corner. Up in the far right, you can see that is Ryan's workshop. He'll tell you more about his work later. And then in the back, you'll see a large orange and blue building. That is our apartments, and we live in the blue building. So it is very nice that we do get to live on campus, and it's very safe. We have fences and a security guard, but we live right there beside the school. This is my favorite slide out of all of them. This past school year, we had 22 students put their faith in Christ. And I just love looking at all of their little faces. We have got kids from a sweet little 2nd grader, Rosanna, who is a good friend of our son Zeke, up to a 10th grade girl named Jayani, who has been just asking really good questions for a really long time. And so it was just really exciting to see her finally surrender to the Lord. A challenge that we face there is legalism that is very prominent in the churches that are there. And we have many students who are scared, I feel like, are hesitant to put their faith in Christ because they think, I've got to follow all these rules, I've got to do all of this stuff. So we have had some kids like on the border who know all the right things and just won't just surrender and knowing that following the Lord is where their joy is. One other picture on here on the right there is actually at our local church. One of our students was baptized at our local church. In total, this year we've had 6 students be baptized, and they have been out in the local churches too, which is something that we really are excited about because that's where discipleship really needs to happen. We're there to help and support them, but knowing that these kids are involved in their local churches is really exciting.
Okay, Freedom Operations. When we moved 3 years ago, we knew that God was calling us there, and the way Freedom had functioned for a while was if you are willing to come, we will find a position for you. My background and Katie's also, we have mechanical engineering degrees. Just by the nature of growing up with a dad who was a handyman, I learned to enjoy mechanics and all kinds of labor. So that's the spot that Freedom had open at the time that we moved. So when I first got there, I was basically a diesel mechanic without training. YouTube was my best friend. We did have a diesel mechanic at that time who taught me quite a bit before they moved back to the States. And then my role has kind of changed over this past 3 years, progressing into some areas of our maintenance and construction. We have had some missionaries return from the field to the States, and so my role is increasing again. And starting this August, kind of already, I'll be the director of our operations, which includes our construction, maintenance areas, kitchen and cleaning staff, transportation, and security. I'm also pursuing a degree right now through Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, a master's in divinity degree, so you could pray for that. That about crushed us this past year as I was in Greek, so if anybody's taken Greek. A caveat to that is the program I'm doing, it's much more affordable than the English program. It's a Spanish program. So all of my classes are in Spanish, so I learned Greek via Spanish. It was exciting. I can say that on this side of the class. So you could pray for that. I'll be taking a little break, probably restarting in October after I get a handle of all the new responsibilities that I'll have. Just a little bit of information for the pictures that you can see in the slide. So we have 10 school buses. You can see that bus is crossing a bridge. It has to go across that bridge to get to most of our students. It's a low water bridge, and it gets flooded out many times a year. So there are lots of days that we can't bring our kids in because of that. But we do have 10 school buses. There's not so much of a good example around here, but back where we're from in West Virginia and Maryland, where it's mountainous, and people go in and timber the roads they cut, that's kind of like the roads that we drive on to go get our kids. So our longest route is about 11 miles out and back. It takes us about an hour and 45 minutes. And so the buses take a beating. I do attribute it to God only, that they require as minimal maintenance as they do. Some of the other things that we do there, you can see us pouring sidewalks. We had a great adventure this past spring of our leach field failed, so we got to work on that for the school. It's part of a septic tank, if you don't know what a leach field is. So while having close to 400 people at the school every day that still need to use the restroom, we're trying to repair where all that stuff goes. So that was a long couple months of that. So that's what you can see. That truck is digging a well for us to help our leach field. We do lots of concrete work down there. Wood doesn't last because of the humidity and the temperature. So if you see us shaking up here, it's not because we're nervous, it's because we're absolutely freezing. This is colder than it normally gets in the country. And we don't have air conditioning, we just use fans. If you noticed on the picture of the school, I should have said it, but there's a bunch of solar panels, so we're completely off-grid for solar and water. So we don't have all of the amenities that have large power draws, but we're comfortable. We're comfortable. Next slide.
So my role in the school is teaching. I have always had a passion for math. I just love it, and this year is my first year having my own class. It was this goofy little group of 7th graders, and there was just something that such joy comes when you are where the Lord has you, and I absolutely loved it. And I get to teach 7th grade again in the fall with a new group of students. I'm really excited for it. It was neat how the Lord uses these kids to teach you patience and different skills. A lot I learned about, the Bible tells us His grace and His mercies are new for us every day. And I had to go in that day, even if they were little boogers the day before, of just grace and mercy to them all over again. I've heard our students kind of equate to like a rough inner city school is how you would maybe think our students. Many conflicts are solved in the bates in our villages through fighting. Many parents do use
Corporal punishment.
corporal punishment is a nice way to say it for their students. So we're working with that and walking alongside that with them. Here are some pictures from my class. A cool one down at the bottom again. Just it's amazing how the Lord can use our hobbies and our interests for Him. That is me playing soccer with the kids at recess. I love soccer. And just through these simple things, I just need how the Lord then used that and playing with the kids, built relationships, especially with that one little guy at the top. His name is Angel. He struggled in school a lot, but through the end, I really saw him putting in effort and trying, and he sat and stayed with me for an extra 30 minutes to take his final exam and wouldn't give up. He kept trying to turn it in. I'm like, nah. I'm like, you can do more, hand it back. And he would keep going. He'd kind of smirk at me and keep going. And it was just neat to watch his the growth in his life. Another thing that I do is just kind of content expert for math for our entire school. The country in general is low in math. I was teaching about a 4th, 5th grade curriculum with our 7th graders. So I help just with that overall with resources for the whole school, do some translating of curriculum. And then in this fall, I'll have a new role. Our youngest, Benjamin, will be into 1st grade. All of the missionary kids, little side note, all of the missionary kids, including our children, go to school alongside their Dominican classmates. So our little boys have class all in Spanish. It's incredible how God made the mind of little children. They have just absorbed the language. But they do get separate classes for math and English because of being more advanced in math, and English is very different as your first language than your second. So I will be teaching Ben math and English in the fall, which will be a good experience. But we love that our boys are in the school. We see their friendships as just really unique opportunities to disciple the students. So we many times have little boys over to our house hanging out, and that's been a really cool opportunity how God has used our children to open some doors.
Okay, so one of the things that we get excited to talk about when we're in new churches with new people, so the ministry is kind of generally located out of the mid-Indiana area, Indianapolis and surrounding is where most of the founding missionaries came from. Was interesting, so we had no connection to the Midwest until Ryan and Nikki moved out here, and then now that Ryan's taken the Indiana job, we have connection to Indiana. But one of the things that Freedom is trying to do is branch out and spread more awareness of who we are. So one of the really great ways to do that, I know that Southern Baptist churches have the IMB and NAM and other means to serve, but if you're interested, and it doesn't have to be just church groups, we have families come for their vacation or family outings that they do every year. They come with us. We do take teams. So multiple times throughout the year we have options available. We have winter, spring, and summer options, so that kind of fits with people who have kids, don't have kids, farmers, and that kind of thing. We get a lot of farmers in December and January. I love farmers. They're the most mechanically capable people in the world. So when I see a farm team coming, that gets me excited. And I know Katie likes to see when there's teachers and students coming. So what our teams do, basically throughout the school year, if you come, we put you in an English tutoring environment where the kids are brought in by classes. You get to sit down for the duration of that class and basically just speak to them, converse with them in English to improve their skills. It's one thing to learn a language in a classroom setting. It's completely different to just be forced to speak it. So that does a lot for them, a lot of benefit for them. If you come in the summer, we have what we call English Enrichment Camp. So after the school year has ended, we'll do a 5 or 6 week camp where different grades come in a week at a time. It's like a day camp type ministry, and teams get involved with that. Again, it's giving them as much English as we can in that time frame through games and different activities. And then in the afternoons, we do Vacation Bible School. So just like you guys finished up, I hear there's a bunch of pros here, so we can take you. You can come down and do VBS. That's kind of my favorite time for teams to come. Honestly, I think if you want to see what we do, because every afternoon you get to go out and you get to see how our students live. You get a real appreciation for their culture, for their struggles, for their home life, and see why we are doing what we feel called to do there. And then also throughout the year and the summer, we have construction opportunities. So you can come and work with me. I promise I'm not that hard to work with, but we do everything from painting to concrete work, laying block. That entire school building, I don't know how many tens of thousands of block in it, are all laid by volunteer and missionary hands, along with some Haitian and Dominican labor. So we do receive a great benefit from short-term teams coming. That is a hotly debated topic in the missions world, whether short-term teams have a benefit. Usually it's viewed from the is it beneficial for the people that you're going to see? And aside from that debate, I think it's incredibly beneficial for the people that come and get to experience a culture that isn't their own. For us, that's what sparked us into the ministry, was going to Freedom for a week-long trip and seeing what they were doing there. Then we also have internship opportunities. So for teens who have graduated high school, and sometimes juniors if we have space available, you can come and do 6 weeks with us in the summer. You can read more about all these things on our website. I will leave prayer cards that we have up here on the front. It has all of our online information on it, and you can learn more about us. But as far as the internships go, we have a school year opportunity. That requires you to have teaching English as a second language training and be at least a sophomore in college, because you come and you run an English classroom for that school year. Yes. And then also, if you come with a 6-week internship, you can either teach English in the morning, do VBS in the afternoon, or you can do construction in the morning and VBS in the afternoon. It's a great opportunity to get young people exposed to cultures that aren't their own and see a different place in the world. We are a completely open country, so it's really easy to get to us as far as bringing a team, especially if it's the first time you're going to go out of the country to do missions work.
And you can see in this picture some pictures of Lydia with us, of those who didn't
Oh, yeah,
know.
sorry. Go back. I meant to highlight this. So one of your own has already been there and paved the way with Lydia Strasser.
We really appreciated Lydia coming down for the month of June. She was able to watch our 4 little boys for me in the morning, so I would be able to get some work done. And then we went out in the afternoons helping with Bible school, or having some of our son's friends over, or going to visit friends in villages. So it was, thank you for sharing her. So another great way, if you would be interested in being involved in our ministry, is through sponsorship. Our students do have to pay to come to the school, because when you pay, it does help you have some skin in the game, some responsibility along with it. But for a private education, including 2 meals a day, all your transportation, our students are paying $20 a year. So there's some deficit there that we need some help in covering, and our big thing for that is through sponsorship. So 100% of the sponsorship support goes directly to the education of the children. It covers costs such as curriculum, our national teacher salaries, transportation, meals, and more. We have over 30 Dominican teachers. We have many Dominicans leading in our administration at the school, and that is our heart and our desire, that it is run by the nationals, people who you do have to be a believer to work at the school. But it's been really cool over the years seeing less and less missionaries actually teaching classes. I am one of the few. Most of all of our classes are run and led by our national staff, and we just really appreciate their commitment to our children and to the Lord. So how sponsorship works is every child can be sponsored at 1, 2, or 3 shares. A share is $60 a month. You can choose to sponsor a child at any level. If you would sponsor a child at 3 shares, you would be the only family or person sponsoring that child. If you would choose a lesser amount, then multiple people would be pouring into that one child. You will receive 3 letters from the child throughout the year. You can send letters to your child. And the coolest part is you can come visit and meet them. If you come down on one of these teams, we'll make sure that you get some time to hang out and be with them, or especially if you're there, we'll make sure they're always in your tutoring group, different things. It's just a really neat opportunity. I know other sponsorships through other organizations, you don't always get to meet the children. So this is a really cool opportunity I feel like that we have. There is also the opportunity to sponsor an entire classroom, which is $200 a month, again, at 3 different shares. As Ryan said, there is our website. It is forfreedom.com. And if you look at that, it has a list of all the pictures of the students and how many shares are available for each one.
Okay, so just to let you know where we are a little bit from talking to Pastor Eric, we were just discussing a little bit whether Central would want to support us financially, so I'll leave that to him to discuss with you guys, but we do look for individual support. I know with Southern Baptist churches, again, because you have the IMB and NAM, a portion of your offering goes to those ministries, but we do pick up personal individual supporters from Southern Baptist churches. So right now, God has blessed us. We have been blessed the entire 3 years that we have been there. I don't think we've ever been below 90% of our support level. Right now, we're at 94%, and it's not like we're not making the budget. We have a little bit of reserve fund that backfills us each month, but that will eventually go away. In that support level, we have 5 supporting churches and then 74 individual and family donors. If you have an interest in partnering with us in the ministry that way, again, you can check out our website. It is forfreedom.com/invest. But there's some cute pictures to see where that money goes. The picture of the apartment, that's our apartment there on campus. That's our kitchen and our living room. We do have a 3-bedroom apartment. It is nice. Space for the boys to be able to sleep. Again, we don't have air conditioning, those kind of things. We cook on propane stoves. All of our appliances are propane. We do have ceiling fans, so we stay pretty comfortable. It gets hot. In the middle there, you have Sweet Benjamin, grocery shopping with Mom. So it is amazing sometimes in the day-to-day you can lose track of it, but just to sit back and realize that everything that supports our life there comes from individual believers that support God in our ministry. And then on the picture with the kids, you can see our van that gets us out to be with those kids. So we chose an option that's not the coolest vehicle, but it's a 12-seat diesel minivan. So it gets us where we're going. We can take lots of people. We can take the seats out and put lots of stuff in it. And so we are thankful for God and to our supporters for supplying those needs. Again, if you're interested, you can talk to us. You can check us out on the website, email us, any of those kind of things. And then prayer requests. If you're a prayer warrior, or even if you're not, these are some things that we're looking forward to the year and are heavy on our hearts and that we need prayer for. So we do have new leadership at Freedom. Recently our presidency turned over, and along with the director of operations position that I have. So we are learning a little bit as we go. We've had a great time of transition with those previous leaders, though. Everything has changed hands amicably. There's not any disunity for that. So that would be a prayer, is that we can really get together in August and do well through the year and bond and be a good leadership team. Adjusting to all of the boys being in school full time. That hits me much less than it hits her. She's had a kid at home for the past 10 years, and so that will be a new adventure for her. And just pray through the emotions that will come with that. For the discipleship of our new students, like Katie mentioned, it's a legalistic country. They are taught that they can lose their faith for listening to non-Christian music, for dancing, for all kinds of things that aren't in the Bible. So we have a new position, actually. One of our missionaries is doing a discipleship program. He's the director of discipleship, so his specific job will be to cycle through those believing students that we have and do individual discipleship with them, and he's working with the churches that are in our communities and our villages to help those pastors out as well, to let them know they have students and try to help them with their theology a little bit. So you can pray for that area. I need a new bus driver in August so that we can get our kids to and from school. I will drive a bus if I have to. I'm not legally allowed to do that, so I would prefer that God bring us a driver, because I don't have my license there and it's difficult to get. And for new missionaries. So we have dropped quite a few missionaries in the past 3 years. We have been backfilling them really well with national staff, but there are some areas that we could use new missionaries on the ground, so you could be praying for that as well. Okay. All right, Kelly. So when I talked to Pastor Eric, he had given me, and we would have failed miserably, about 10 minutes of the time, so I was able to split it how I wanted to. He messaged on Tuesday, I think, while we were actually traveling to Indiana to visit some folks, and let me know that he had a conflict or something, and asked if we could also take the sermon time. And fortunately, I had a sermon in the bag. Now, I've only preached this in Spanish, and actually I had to translate it to English because it's the first sermon that I just wrote in Spanish. So I had a little bit of time, so hopefully I've got everything translated over correctly. I think that I do. So I'm going to open with prayer, and then we're going to look at the book of Daniel today. Dear God, thank you for today and this opportunity to be in your house here at Central Baptist. Thank you for these folks that are here and the invitation that Pastor Eric extended to us to be here today. I pray that through this passage of Daniel that we're going to look at this morning, that your words would come through my mouth and that we could be edified, uplifted, taught, and instructed through these words. In Jesus' name, amen. So if you want to turn to the first chapter of Daniel with me, while you do that, I'll give you some time to get there. Just a little intro that kind of hit this week that God, I think, provides often when we're preaching and teaching is my father-in-law asked if this was going to be a missionary message. I said, no, not specifically. And then as I read over it and thought about it some, it kind of is. So a lot of people will ask pastors and missionaries, how did you know that God was calling you there, or what got you to the field? When we have teams come down and work with us, they're often eager to know what has put us in the place that we are in. And I think that can happen two ways. One of the ways we're kind of see this morning a little bit is kind of an extra bonus to the passage. But I do believe that God can call leaders, pastors, and missionaries spontaneously. He can just lay that on their heart out of nowhere. But I believe the second option, and the one that happens more often, is that he takes people who are being faithful in the local church, serving and growing in responsibility, and he lays on their heart to come into the ministry and assume more responsibility. So I think the way that happens, and kind of the title of my sermon this morning, you can see under Daniel, is to purpose in your heart to follow God. So every day as a believer, you may have heard people say that you have to preach the gospel to yourself every day, but we have to purpose in our heart to follow God on a daily basis, and that's what we're going to see here in Daniel. And you'll see how through this first chapter of Daniel, because he has done that, God has given him more and more responsibility and blessed him through that. So go ahead to the next slide, Kelly. I will have the text up here as well because I use a couple different translations throughout this message. So we're just going to read together Daniel 1 through 7 to start with. In the third year of the reign of King Jehoiakim of Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and laid siege to it. The Lord handed King Jehoiakim of Judah over to him. So I'm going to pause there. Again, God does things when you're working on messages like this, and that jumped out to me. I'm not going to talk politics from the pulpit. But if you really read that slowly and you look, the Lord handed King Jehoiakim of Judah over to King Nebuchadnezzar. So he took his chosen people and he decided for his reason, for his will, to let a evil nation of Babylon come in and have those people, to have his chosen people for his will and a plan that I'm sure these people couldn't see at the time. So just as an extra encouragement this morning, as people are concerned that the world is going worse and worse and worse, God is always in control. As in Romans 13, it says he appoints those leaders and powers. So that's just an extra that the Lord laid on my heart this morning. We can have comfort when we look at the world and things aren't going the way that maybe we think they should if Christians were in charge. Continuing on, read verse 2 there. The Lord handed Jehoiakim of Judah over to him, along with some of the vessels from the house of God. Nebuchadnezzar carried them to the land of Babylon, to the house of his God, and put the vessels in the treasury of his God. The king ordered Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the Israelites from the royal family and from the nobility, young men without any physical defect, good-looking, suitable for instruction in all wisdom, knowledgeable, perceptive, and capable of serving in the king's palace. He was to teach them the Chaldean language and literature. The king assigned them daily provisions from the royal food and from the wine that he drank. They were to be trained for 3 years, and at the end of that time they were to attend the king. Among them from the Judahites were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief eunuch gave them the names. He gave them the name Belteshazzar to Daniel, Shadrach to Hananiah, Meshach to Mishael, and Abednego to Azariah. So we're going to look at a few things through this verse. The first thing we're going to look at is, so who was Daniel? Go ahead, Kelly, to the next slide. So we see right there, that's the complete description of Daniel. He was a young man. And if we stop there, we might say, okay, what is the importance of that? But if we look a bit at history, we know from Jewish tradition, and even today the Jews still carry this out, that a boy was considered a man when they turned 13 and had completed their bar mitzvah birthday religious ceremony. Has anybody ever been to a bar mitzvah? I've been to one. They are quite an event, and it signifies something that we don't really have in American Christian culture, when a boy becomes a man. So at the age of 13 in the Jewish culture, a boy, after passing his bar mitzvah rite, is considered a man. This is when they would have been looked at to start religious training under rabbis, to start more into their professional life at about 13 years old. So this young man signifies that Daniel was likely between 13 and 20 years old. And it says because they have wisdom and these kind of things, he was probably a little older than 13, so that he had a few years of training. But he's likely between 15 and 20 years old at the time that this happens. So think about this, especially teens. You're Daniel. You're living your life. You're going to school. I don't know if they had sports. They're playing games. They're socializing with friends and family. And here comes your enemy. And you have no idea what's going to happen. They choose you and your friends and about 7,000 other men, teenagers, young men, to take, and they say, here we go, we're starting the walk. And they head them to Babylon. Any idea how far Babylon, or the city of Babylon, was from Jerusalem at this point? Okay. So it's about 800 to 900 miles is what most scholars, historians believe. So just an example of that, and we can see about how long that would take. Daniel doesn't tell us, but Ezra does when he leaves the end of this captivity of exile and he goes back to start rebuilding Jerusalem. It says in Ezra 7:9 that he had left Babylon on the first day of the first month, and he came to Jerusalem on the first day of the 5th month. So if we do our math there, 5 minus 1, that's 4. Because the merciful hand of God was upon him. So God had been merciful to Ezra in his travels, and it took him 4 months to travel from Babylon back to Jerusalem. Now, if you look this up on Google, that would be about the equivalent of going from here, walking from here to Jacksonville, Florida. Okay? Now, Google says you can do that in 13 days. And that's if you're just straight walking 24 hours a day. Okay? But this walk back to Babylon would have had about 7,000 captives and tens of thousands of Babylonian soldiers. They would have had to stop and make camp and eat and take care of their animals. There weren't nice highways like there are today. They would have had carts breaking down and these kind of things. So we can imagine that it would have taken Daniel and the captives about 4 months to get from Jerusalem to Babylon. So this whole time, I can only imagine, what is Daniel thinking as he's walking for 4 months? Maybe they have explained where he's going or what he's doing, but there's a good chance not. And so you have 4 months with your thoughts. I don't know if anybody else is like me in here, but when I get left alone with my thoughts for too long, I can kind of spiral a bit. So just imagine, Daniel has 4 months. They're probably not in great conditions. They're probably tired of walking. They probably have sores all over their feet from the conditions. Who knows if they're feeding them. So Daniel has these 4 months of traveling, thinking, what's going to happen to me? Is God real? Is this God that I have learned about and put my faith in real? Why is he letting this happen to us? Are we going to be forced into hard labor? Are they walking us all this way just to kill us when we get there? Maybe he was thinking that God was failing. Maybe he was questioning whether God was real. So we see that they arrive in Babylon. Go ahead, Kelly, to the next slide. And you can see highlighted there, it says that Nebuchadnezzar had charged this eunuch with teaching the language and the literature and most likely the culture of the Chaldeans. So these are the Babylonians. So now we see for 3 years that these guys who have just walked 7,000 miles, who knows what condition they're in, get to Babylon, and they start 3 years of training so that they can serve the king when they're finished. This training likely was an indoctrination to get them to forget the faith that they had, to become accustomed to those of the Babylonians, to believe in their gods, their cultures, their customs, and their ways. So during this time, Daniel has to consider whether he's going to hold on to the faith that he has known, that he has in his God, or whether he will give that away and accept what he is learning. Okay, Kelly, next slide. So we can see that the king assigned them daily provisions from the royal food and from the wine that he drank. They were to be trained for the 3 years, and at the end of that time, they were to attend the king. So finally, there's a little light at the end of this tunnel. He's walked 4 months, 800, 900 miles. He's just been told that he's going to be trained in a manner completely opposite of what he has had for the first 15 years of his life. But finally, a feast. He's going to be presented the best food that exists. If you know about the Babylonians at this time, they were the largest power. They were taking over pretty much everything, so he had his choice of meats and cheeses. I don't know what the most popular food around is here, somebody's chicken. Pork chops, olives, grapes, all the best fruit, breads, wines. And so we see Daniel presented with this opportunity, finally a bit of respite. He can eat well and replenish his body. I know what I would do presented in this position. I don't know if you've ever been to Golden Corral, Western Sizzlin, one of these type places. I would be the first in line. I would have a plate. It would be mounted a foot high. I would be balancing it with one hand while I put desserts on another plate and try to get that back to the table without dropping anything, and then likely eat and repeat that process as many times as till I was uncomfortable. But this is where we see the faith of this young man, Daniel, come to pass. Go ahead to the next slide. So we're going to read Daniel 1, 8 through 16. I have here on the slides as well. But it says, presented with this food, Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not be defiled. Now God had brought Daniel into the favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs, and the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. So Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief priest of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies. And as you see fit, so deal with your servants. So he consented with them in this manner and tested them for 10 days. Why in the world would Daniel reject this food? I'm sure he was hungry by this point in time. Okay, what was wrong with the king's food? Well, to us, it seems like nothing, because we don't have the same commands today as that we did that Daniel had. So there are a few reasons why we can see that Daniel would have rejected the king's food. And really the tag verse here is that first part of verse 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. So let's see why he would need to do that. Okay, there were likely two reasons. You can read about them in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, where it gives the laws about food for the Jewish people. But these laws did two things. They protected the Israelites for health reasons, but more importantly, they separated them from other peoples. God had chosen the Israelites from all of the nations that were in the world at this time. He set them apart. That gives us our word holiness that we use, to be set apart from other things. So God has taken the Israelites in the Old Testament, we see, and He has set them apart from the rest of the nations. And He gives them these very specific food laws, one reason for health, but a second reason to set them apart so they can have a difference between them and the other nations. A second reason that goes well with this is that culturally in those days, and still in many Middle Eastern cultures, sharing food with someone signifies a bond or relationship. You would go in someone else's house to share food with them, likely if you were in similar status, similar social setting, you agreed with their morals and their character and their religion. So Daniel, purposing in his heart to not indulge in this food, he's remaining faithful to God because of the laws that God has put in and the commands that he has given to the Israelites. And he is also saying that I disagree with the king, his culture, and the religion of Babylon. Go ahead, Kelly, to the next one. And you can see that Daniel does this in a manner that edifies his faith, that allows us to see some of his character. When he approaches this situation, he simply asks or requests of the eunuch. He doesn't demand, he doesn't throw a fit, he doesn't demand, he wasn't cruel. He just asked, and he trusted that God would be faithful and provide. Daniel was blessed by God for his faithfulness. God had granted Daniel the kindness and the compassion of the chief eunuch. This man could have said no, that you have to eat the king's food because he was afraid of the king. He had a complete right to be afraid of the king. It adds to the impact of this story, the willingness of this king's servant to allow Daniel this request. We know this because in Kings, just before Daniel, this same king Nebuchadnezzar, in 2 Kings 25, 6 through 7, says this, where he kills the king Zedekiah of Judah. Zedekiah was brought before the king of Babylon at Riblah, where his sentence was pronounced against him. They first killed Zedekiah's sons before his eyes, and then to make sure that this was the last image that King Zedekiah ever saw, they gouged out his eyes, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. So we see the cruelty of Nebuchadnezzar. We see why this eunuch had a right to be afraid of him and not go against the command that Nebuchadnezzar has given to make sure that these young men eat the king's food. We see also in the book of Esther how people feared the king and how cruel and torturous they were. In Esther 4, 9 through 11, all of the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that whoever approaches the king in the inner court without being called, the king has only one law, that he be put to death, unless the king extends the golden scepter to them and spares their lives. Esther 4, 9 through 11. So we can see just for approaching the king without an invitation, he could be killed. So people in this time had right to be afraid of their rulers. Okay, and then on to the next. Go ahead, one more. Good, yeah, we go. Okay, but we can see after this 10 days of testing that these 4 men looked fuller and healthier than the others. Their faithfulness was rewarded, as we see in Daniel 1, 15 through 20. At the end of 10 days, it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's food. So the steward took away their food and wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables. As for these 4 youths, God gave them, and this is where the blessing of being faithful, purposing in your heart to follow God in everything that you do, God increasing them in responsibility in giving a blessing. So he increases. Verse 17, as for these 4 youths, God gave them the learning and skill in all literature and wisdom. Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. And at the end of the time, when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with them, and among all of them none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they stood before the king, and in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all of the magicians and enchanters that were in all of his kingdom. And we know through the rest of the book of Daniel, Daniel continually purposes in his heart through different situations, as do these other 3 young men that we can see with the statue that Nebuchadnezzar makes to himself, where everyone is requested to bow down, and these 3 men, stand and say, we have purposed in our heart to follow God. We are not going to bow down to your statue. We can see how they are put in the furnace. God rescues them from that situation and blesses them. We see again with Daniel when the other leaders try to trick him, or try to trick the king at the time into creating the edict where if anybody prays to the king for 30 days or to any king other than him for 30 days, that they should be put in the lion's den. We see in that situation again, Daniel purposing in his heart to follow God. He continues, just like he always did with his prayers, being faithful to God. So my question for you this morning is, are you purposing in your heart to follow God every day? Are you in a healthy relationship with him? Are you involved in the local church in a manner that demonstrates that you are purposing in your heart to follow God? Are you prepared in every moment to stand firm on your faith? There may be times where, unlike Daniel, we purpose in our heart to follow God and we may not be rewarded for it. We may face persecution, as we talked about in our Sunday school class this morning. We may face revilement. We may not see a fruit of that, except for that we have the confidence that the fruit of us purposing in our heart daily to follow God is everlasting life with him after this world.